and threw it against the problem and gave it to folks who are yet to be educated, we can sustain the solution. It does not scale. So the problem of knowledge. Does this work? Yes. Well, so the problem is about disparity of knowledge, those who know and have been educated and those who do not know. So the first thing we need to tackle is education. We need to find the scholars, we need to find them young, and we need to support them financially, and we need to mentor them. But that's not enough. We need to find the best professors in the Philippines, and we need to attach and connect them with the best academic minds in the world from the best schools in the world. So that's education. The second pillar of our strategy is about innovation, because innovation leads to the invention of products and businesses that can scale and that we can use to compete globally and put the Philippines on the global economic map. That's sustainable. PhilDev has a project called CloudPop, and our aspiration is to put devices in every schoolhouse in the Philippines and have it connected to the internet. I think we can all agree that that's not only a pretty cool project, but it's pretty fulfilling. But what we are actually trying to do is we are trying to train engineers to solve crazy problems like how do you actually connect a school that is not connected to the internet and may not even have electricity. Now, if those engineers can then figure out how to create thin client manufacturing products, and we can actually manufacture it here in the Philippines, imagine what could happen. We could actually take all of that R&D and all that manufacturing, all that distribution know-how, and actually create an industry here that could create income and could create wealth that's distributed to everyone. And entrepreneurship. Very simply, this is the quickest and most efficient way to create and distribute wealth in any society. So we also need to find those startup entrepreneurs that are crazy enough to believe in themselves and their idea. And then we need to match them with the best from Silicon Valley. We need to find venture capitalists who are willing to listen and potentially fund the good ideas and connect them with Filipino mentors who've done this before. There's no shortage of Filipinos who've built multi-million-dollar businesses. We need to connect them with these startup entrepreneurs. And then we bring them into a room through workshops and hackathons, and we teach them how to scale and build viable businesses. We want to build an ecosystem of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. So that's the strategy. Right? We're going to use education as a tool to drive invention and innovation, and we're going to use entrepreneurship to create and distribute wealth across the Philippine society. But the secret sauce of PhilDev is not the strategy, it's the people. And let me make it really clear. We are not philanthropists. We're not here to give in order to feel good. We don't care about whose idea it was. We care about what ideas are right. We are entrepreneurs, we're technologists, and we're problem solvers. More importantly, we are on a mission. And we can't do this alone. That's fairly clear. We need people to collaborate with, people to partner with. We need academics, we need scholars, we need entrepreneurs. But more importantly, we need people who are bold enough to want to tackle this problem. Because if I may, let me end with hopefully a rhetorical question for the Filipinos in the room. If we are not going to care about this problem of poverty in the Philippines, then who will? If we're not going to solve this problem, then who will? We have to do it, we must do it, and we can do it. And if the question you're asking is, when do we do it? Time is now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elmer. Isn't Elmer just the coolest guy?
So cool, so cool. Why couldn't you dress that way?
I know,
Eric?
I can never get away with it, so.
You can take some tips from my Elmer.
Thanks again, Elmer. In fact, I just posted a picture of Elmer on Facebook, so I'm sure he's gonna have a lot more friends by today. So thank you again, and thank you for laying out the mission of PhilDev. Indeed, it is a very hairy and scary one. I think I've mentioned this to Dado a few times, that this is something that we may not see in our lifetime, but it has to happen. Poverty has to be defeated, and with your help, I think we should be able to do that. So let's move on with the program.
Well, what Elmer said earlier was really true, that PhilDev is a bunch of problem solvers. And I can't think of a better problem solver within PhilDev than our next speaker, who's going to talk about more about PhilDev's mission. Jones Castro is an independent director of BDO Unibank, executive vice chairman of PhilDev, and we'd like to welcome him today. Jones?
Thank you, Rona. Eric? When I was asked to dress in a barong, I now know why. I'm the oldest guy, or at least the oldest looking guy. And we have to have the full spectrum of formal dress. It's most formal one. Unfortunately, I don't want to take off my barong to be formal. As we mentioned before, last symposium, we would give a progress report from symposium to symposium. And that's at least for us to report to you our progress on our 3-year journey for partnership with USA. Okay? So for the agenda today is, for those who do not know PhilDev, and more importantly, do not know IDEA, we did this in Manila, and I would like to do it in Cebu, is to talk about why are we doing this, what do we want to do, how do we do it, where are we, and what are our steps. So why? Technological advances impacting global markets. For those who are here, most of you know what a PC is, probably don't know what an electric typewriter is. But in the past 30 to 40 years, we've gone from PC to internet, mobile devices, mobile apps, wearable, and the growth, technological growth. In the studies that we've looked at PhilDev and in IDEA, there's a strong linkage between science and technology and economic growth. As Elmer mentioned, innovation and entrepreneurship creates jobs, accumulates wealth, and more importantly, would diffuse that wealth to a lot more people than basically what the status quo is. You all know that the Filipinos are vast consumers of technological advances. When Nokia was out, we had the most messages, text messages per individual, per Nokia user. We are now one of the top users of Google and also Facebook. And I tell you, my kids, especially our youngest, before she eats her meal, she takes a picture of what she eats and sends it out. And I think a third of the pictures are all selfies. I think we take pictures of our meals more regularly than we say grace before the meal. But the Filipinos have lost ground with our neighboring countries. Other countries have developed technologically, have increased their S&T foundation, while we have not. And why is that? We are vast consumers. But unfortunately, we do not keep up and we are not producers. So we came up with an idea, which is a 3-year partnership with USAID, and it's really to establish an entrepreneurship training program. One is to leverage the resources to bring benefits to the engineering students. Secondly, to create a visiting professor program to bring in professors from the US, visit universities you partner with, and establish at least an entrepreneurship program or infuse entrepreneurship courses within the engineering curriculum. Coordinate among the 3 sectors as we did last year and as we're doing this year, which is with the government, with academia, and private sector. And then lastly, to bring in US entrepreneurs and also professors into the Philippines. And what's the how? First is the symposium, which is this national symposium. It's one of the 3 pillars. And it's a platform for dialogue among Philippine and US universities, private sector, academia, startup entrepreneurs. The second are the workshops. And the workshops are annual workshops. It's 5 days. The first 2 days will be tomorrow and the 28th. And then the next 3 days will be July 9th and 11th. And then lastly is the visiting professors program. Wherein, again, as I mentioned, we bring in professors, help the universities. Particularly, this is an opportune time that we are reviewing our curriculum for 2018, that we're reviewing it and how we infuse entrepreneurship in 2014, this is basically what we were able to do. We had our symposium, and we had representation from the government. We had Secretary Purisima and Ambassador Goldberg. And beyond our wildest dreams, we had 844 participants or attendees at the conference. We also had a panel from the industry and a panel from academia. During the symposium, there were 7 issues that came up. One is the need for entrepreneurship programs in universities. The second is a week mentoring program for the startups. When we had the workshops last year, it was well attended. The only question, or at least a question that kept on coming up after was, what next? Will you do mentoring? The third is regulatory red tape. Fourth is weak access to capital funding. The fifth, which is the need for broader and cheaper internet access. By the way, Korea is trying to be the first with a 90% penetration with an 85 Mbps. And we're trying to get to 5. Foreign ownership rules. Then lastly, intellectual property. Of these 7, what we decided is we would focus on 3 first. One is the need for entrepreneurship program in the universities. And I would leave the message, or at least the announcement, to Dr. Dupanan comes up. Second is a week mentoring program. We're studying this, and we will implement that this year. And then the third is a week access to capital funding, and we're looking at how we could do an inventory of the investors, sort of like not a match.com, but a platform for startups to be able to look at who are potential investors. Tado is an engineer, entrepreneur, and venture capitalist in our workshop series, March. And we have Eros Sadar-Ismini, who's also going to be one of the lecturers for our workshop. He was here for the whole 5 days of the workshop. We go Gary Winnick, I think this is his 6th time to the Philippines, 3 times for PhilDev, signed an institutional MOU with MIT, visited Xavier, and also had met with MSU. Carl Scott, who's University of Houston, visited with the University of Philippines, Los Baños. And interestingly enough, he's also a professor. He's an entrepreneur, and his business is farm. So it just fit right into those budgets. And then we have Gobet, who's also from Case Buster, and visited with Ateneo de Davao. Don Lewis from Texas A&M visiting Batangas State University. And of course, last but not least, in your own backyard at USC was Dan Tax, who was his second visit to the University of Sacramento. Can we move the next slide, please? So what are our next steps? For the symposium, which is today, yesterday we had a workshop, a one-day workshop with our 2014 workshop attendees. Basically, it's not a refresher course, but after having gone through 5 days, we expected them to have known more, moved on more further with their own businesses, their startups. So basically, there was a pre-presentation of where they were, and there were mentors continuing to ask questions. And Ahmed, who was the one who headed the whole day of the workshop, also gave a case study for them to be able to look at and be able to ask questions themselves on the startup venture that he proposed. As I said, tomorrow and Saturday will be days 1 and 2 of our workshop. The next 3 days will be in July, 9 to 11. Then we have 8 visiting professors, of which we've already completed 4. And the 5th one, at the end of this week, visiting throughout the Philippines. But we will continue and work with CHED to infuse entrepreneurship in the engineering curriculum. We will implement the mentoring, and then we will look at implementation of directory of That's it. Thank you very much. I have the pleasure of introducing our next 2 keynote speakers, and I'll introduce the first one. I am sure you've heard talk about ASEAN 2015 or ASEAN integration, impact to that, and I've heard the full gamut of there won't be any impact in 2015 versus you better start getting ready because competition is ready. But for those who, just very quickly what ASEAN 2015 is, there are 10 countries that have decided, starting this year, that they will work together as, I guess the best way to explain it is as an economic bloc. Economic bloc a la the European, because if you really think about it, the ASEAN nations have a big base, population base. This is where the growth is, so we might as well work as a bloc. Of course, part of that then is you have to drop your tariffs, you have to open up in terms of labor, you have to have standardization in terms of corporate governance, and then you also have to have the educational level. The challenge to us is, what do we do as a country? How do we prepare for it? And more importantly, which is really the foundation, how do we, as academics, prepare our startup businesses with the influx of ASEAN 2015? Now, as I said, I've had the full spectrum. Some people will say it'll take time because everyone will want to keep their territorial integrity. And that's true. But it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Some countries are far more eager to open up their borders. Others are much more timid in opening up their borders. On the far end, you have Laos, Cambodia, who will open up their borders. They need capital, they need the technology, they need the technology transfer. So they'll open up. And you have Singapore and Malaysia who would like to come in because they have such a small base. Singapore has only 5 million. And you can only grow so much with 5 million. You have to go outside, and all of a sudden, with ASEAN 2015, they have a 600 million population. So essentially, I would say Singapore is probably truly at that. In the Philippines, we have the challenge then, what do we do for ASEAN 2015? And the question also, for an entrepreneur, is how does that impact me? What do I have to do to prepare? Or more importantly, what do I have to do to take advantage? So for today, we have a speaker who's the Assistant Secretary for Industry Development at the Department of Trade and Industry. He's a faculty member of the University of Asia and the Pacific. He also finished his BS Economics at the University of the Philippines, received his master's at Center for Research and Communication, and then received his PhD again at the University of the Philippines. I, s- I say it's the right individual because the issue really is how does ASEAN integration affect trade and industry. And again, within that, really the start of business. So to help us, or at least give us his points and enlighten, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rodolfo. Thank you.
Hear me? Thank you. Good morning to everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, USAID, IDEA, Philippine Development Foundation, for inviting PCI. It's a very important forum. And would like to also acknowledge Dr. Patricia Tuanen, Dr. Dado Manao, colleagues from DOST and other government agencies, academic officials, faculty, and most importantly to the students who are here with us. Let me just give you a brief snapshot of what the ASEAN at 2050 would be like, particularly focusing on the economic aspects. So this is just one slide, and then I'll go through what the Philippine government has been doing with respect to the AEC. Then I'll give you some case studies of the specific interventions that we're doing, and then pose to you important questions, which I hope that you could consider as you go through the workshops all throughout. Essentially, the ASEAN economic integration focuses on trading goods. That's very important because many people think that with the ASEAN integration, by 2015, we will already be having free flow of services, free flow of investment. I noticed also that in the 7 major items which you are carrying on from the 2014 work plan from the idea presentation by Mr. Jones Castro, there are questions there, there are issues there raised, for instance, access to capital, for instance, foreign restrictions on investment. The approach in ASEAN on all of this would just really be more of facilitating flow of services and investment. But by and large, when we talk about the ASEAN Economic Community in 2015, we are referring to a single free market for goods. And this is not something new. So for instance, if you're saying, what was different when we woke up in January 1, 2015, as for example, between December 31, 2014, really nothing was different. Because since 2010, we have already removed products on all of our, we have already removed duties on all of our products. Very few exceptions remain. The case of the Philippines, these are for swine, chicken, potatoes, corn, and sugar, which in 2015 and beyond will still have a tariff rate of 5%. And then rice will have a tariff rate of 35% for 2015 and beyond. But all the other products since 2010, 0% na po yun. So for the benefit of our foreign participants here, whenever I lapse into the vernacular, my next sentence would be a direct translation to that as Dave from Stride would know. No, 0% na po lahat ng tarifa sa ating mga produkto since 2010. If we're talking about 2015, what will happen? What are the new things that will happen in 2015? Essentially, wala na po. No new earth-shaking things will be happening in 2015. But we're now focusing from 2015 and beyond, since we have already reduced tariffs or eliminated tariffs on trading goods, our focus is really now on the facilitated flow of services and investment. But essentially, what does this mean? This also means that professionals will still need to take licensure exams. It's not really a very free flow of services. You will still have to be subjected to the domestic regulations, the respective ASEAN member countries. Investment, sad to say, is one of the things that you are looking at as the one problems taking off from our 2014 Symposium. Investment will still be subjected to export caps. There are ongoing cooperation in harmonizing regulatory requirements. One of the issues mentioned was in terms of intellectual property rights. The pressure, I would say, for the Philippines in terms of intellectual property rights enforcement is coming not from the ASEAN, but it's coming more of internal, from our domestic constituencies and from our bilateral relations. In terms of the ASEAN, it's really more of cooperation. So in summary, what we'd like to say here is that by January 1, 2016, essentially we'd be having the same regime as January 1, 2015, which essentially was the same as what we had January 1, 2013. Because trade in goods, they have essentially removed all the tariff in 2010. Now, having said that, what does that imply? It implies that we are going to look for an anchor for all of our entrepreneurship, innovation, and other interventions. It should not be the ASEAN. It should be the internal drive for efficiency, for competitiveness. Now, for the Philippine government, we are using the ASEAN Economic Community as a way to focus our interventions, to focus and to generate more collaboration among the different players. We are implementing a 4C or AEC strategy that focuses on enhancing competitiveness, on complying with our commitments to the AEC, intensifying communications, and promoting collaboration. What we are seeing is that with the single free market on trade in goods, it is generating greater competition and complementation, and has provided the added impetus for us to really collaborate. Let me cite specific examples. I'll cite 3 examples. The first one is for coffee. For an industry such as coffee, what we are doing is that we're collaborating with, for example, the Department of Agriculture for really making sure that the best coffee seed varieties are planted in a particular locality. DTI, through our shared service facility, we provide funding for investments in common facilities that are needed by groups of SMEs, cooperatives, for a particular industry. We provide assistance in participation in trade fairs and capacity building on business management and entrepreneurship. DOST is providing assistance in terms of its small enterprise technology upgrading program. They provide equipment and training in terms of application of the equipment that we will need to buy through our shared service facilities. TESDA provides training for baristas, for deployment in areas where there are many tourists. And then DPWH provides the farm-to-market roads, while the local government provides the cross-cutting support and other infrastructure support. Now, all of this convergence means that we are able to intervene from the beans to the cups to the cafe. The same is true for engineered bamboo. Now, but what we are very excited about is when it comes to publication laboratories. I'm not sure if the students here are all familiar with publication laboratories, but the Philippines has one publication laboratory. Sad to say it's only one among maybe 500 globally, a network of 500 publication laboratories globally. A Fab Lab is actually a collection of commercially available machines and parts linked by software. No? Maybe just to quickly go through this, let me present to you what we are doing with the publication laboratory that we have at the Bohol Island State University. So we are able to teach students there the fabrication of microcontrollers with the Arduino technology. We are able to, for example, assist them in terms of fabricating houses that do not need nails or those that need standard construction technologies. Upscaling of plastic materials. And we are able to democratize the fabrication laboratory by incorporating this in our STEM education, but more importantly, providing access to MSMEs and even CCT meaning the Pantawid Pamilya program of the DSWD, access to the fabrication laboratory. Let me just talk quickly about the CCT beneficiary. We are able to provide assistance to them in terms of deploying an expert designer and helping them use the fabrication laboratory to produce products that can be then sold to the tourists that go to Bohol. Through this experience, we now know that you need to build an entire ecosystem for you to be able to support a project such as a fabrication laboratory. An ecosystem that includes, and I'm glad that this is really one of the priority areas for PhilDev, for IDEA, an ecosystem that includes your academic institutions, your entrepreneurs, and your innovators. So those are all part of the ecosystem that we're trying to build in Bohol, and which we are trying to replicate in 5 more areas in the future. Now, the basic issue that we have now, that we're trying to address now, and this is a challenge that I present to everyone, is that nurturing an innovation-driven entrepreneurship system needs to be inclusive. In the fabrication laboratory experience, this has been always a dilemma for us. Do we go for assisting the micro, small, and medium enterprises? Do we go for assisting the CCT beneficiary? And if we do that, does that contradict, or will we be able to use efficiently and effectively our resources to be able to support innovators that can produce the world-class, groundbreaking products and services that, for example, PhilDev would like the Philippines to have? Is there an inherent conflict within these two, in addressing these two different markets and target partners? Can a single ecosystem be used for both fostering the development and delivery of groundbreaking products and services, and at the same time promoting innovation among MSMEs, including the poorest of the poor Filipinos? What we would like to see from the government side, and this is our bias, we'd like to nurture an ecosystem or ecosystems that is open, or which are open and inviting to those who most need to participate but entirely lack the means to do so. How can we suck in the poorest of the poor, the MSMEs, into this virtuous cycle of innovation-led development? So that is my challenge to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Assistant. Thank you. Anyway, thank you, Assistant Secretary Rodolfo. Certainly it's a challenge that we all need to address and take up. Our next keynote speaker was a keynote speaker last year, as I mentioned, and we invited her again to speak to us today. And thank you very much for coming back. Dr. Likwanan is a social psychologist. She's an educator, a women's rights and empowerment activist. And for us at PhilDev, she has been one of our champions. She's been assisting us. She's actually a staunch ally in terms of our program for PhilDev and for IDEA. She had her MA in psychology from Cornell University and received her PhD in social psychology from Penn State University. Dr. Likwanan currently is the chairperson for the Commission on Higher Education. And in her position at CHED, and because of her and her technical panels and other officers of the administration, we have made great strides, at least in our vision, or at least one of our objectives, which is to involve the universities who are lab engineering I'd like to introduce Dr. Nikwanan and tell us a little bit. Thank you.
Good morning. The role of science, technology, and innovation in economic development, and hence in improving the country's global competitiveness, is generally recognized. We've heard that throughout the IDEA Symposia and this morning. The role of entrepreneurship as well in the country's growth is also widely accepted. In the Philippine higher education system, specifically the Commission on Higher Education, we recognize the role of higher education in developing science and technology and in producing and nurturing researchers, scientists, technologists, and innovators. Thus, our support for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or the STEM areas, actually in Chen, we've added agriculture and fisheries, so that has become STEAM. Anyway, these areas have been identified as priority courses, and scholarships, research grants, and equipment in these areas are given to higher education institutions. We also have a reasonable track record in promoting entrepreneurship through our degree programs. There are 202 Philippine higher education institutions offering baccalaureate and graduate programs in entrepreneurship, with the largest number, of course, in the National Capital Region. We have 42 such programs. Steadily, over the past 5 years, 40 programs are being. Thus, the emphasis on entrepreneurship is not new. And technology, higher education, science and